Welcome back or welcome front if it's the first time joining us. I am Joshua with Adventure Game Hotspot podcast. We have our old friend here, Adventure Game Geek, back co-hosting with us once again. And we have our well, everybody knows him, but we'll call him our new friend, Robert Holmes. How are you doing, gentlemen?
Very good.
Very good, thanks.
Yes. And obviously, we're going to be talking a little bit about music. If you know Robert, you know that he is a very talented musician. You probably have heard him on a lot of adventure games, such as Gabriel Knight. We'll let him discuss a little bit about that. So, we were supposed to have this show yesterday. However, there was a little bit of a power outage. Sorry to hear that. And Robert got his power back literally an hour before the show. So, anyway,
Yeah, let's hear it for firewood.
that's right. Robert, why don't you tell everybody, for those who may not know who you are, why don't you tell us all a little bit about your background?
Well, I grew up in LA. I was in rock and roll for a lot of years as a young, careless, fun-loving person, and got to do a lot of recording and touring back in the 70s and early 80s. Moved from rock and roll into studio work, did that for quite a while in the LA area. Moved from there into post-production, did a lot of film post-production, and found myself, because my wife got hired by Sierra Online as a creative director. I found myself in Oakhurst with not a lot to do. So went to Mark Siebert and said, hey, I've got this studio background and my education is in cinema history and film scoring. I could probably score some games. And Mark graciously gave me a slot on the team. And that sort of was my entry into adventure games, and was it both an education and a wild ride.
Wow.
Did a few things there at Sierra. Have done a few things afterwards. The Gabriel series, Gray Matter, Morbeus, the Scarlet Furies, which was a band that I did with my daughter Raleigh, and a lot of good friends. Music has been a great companion in my life.
So I think I speak for Adventure Game Geek, and I'll also say, look, at the end of this, we're going to be doing our top 5 favorite adventure game soundtracks. So I'm pretty sure we're going to see a few games that have been scored by Robert on there, but I think I speak for Geek that some of our favorite games scored by you, my friend. So we thank you for that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to give away my top 5 just yet, but yeah, like there is something in there by Robert, of course. I'm not just saying that because he's here. Like it honestly is in my top 5. So
absolutely.
Well, I'm intrigued.
And so since then, was Morbeus the last game that you worked on?
Actually, sort of simultaneously with Morbeus, I did the anniversary edition of GK1.
Okay.
The remake. So, and that was actually a pretty interesting time to be doing both those scores simultaneously, and having to go back and revisit my own score was kind of a horrific and humbling experience. And then recently, as I know we'll probably talk about, I was able to sort of jump back into that same pond and work on the new album Sequel.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to mention. Sequel seems there's many tracks in there that are, if you like the Gabriel Knight type of series and all the type of scores that you're known for, the Sequel seems to be heavily inspired. Pardon. So let's talk about that a little bit. What actually got you and decided, okay, so I want to make a solo album. Pardon. let's get that out of the way first. So, what inspired you to make a solo album, and when did sequels start to be penned?
Um, Jane and I had been living back east. We had a farm back there for about 10 years, and we decided to move back to the Pacific Northwest, which had always sort of been our home base. So about 2 years ago, we moved back, and I was setting up my studio, which, you guys know as a musician is always daunting and challenging to rewire and set up a new studio. So as I was doing that, I was pulling out old gear, and I happened to pull out some of the old Kurzweils that I had used on the GK games. And I, was just playing around, and suddenly I started hearing some of that music in my head as if, I could probably write more of this if I had a reason. And I started thinking more and more about it. And, we've been so fortunate to have people just about weekly, I'll hear from somebody around the world who the music has meant something to them. And it's so rewarding to hear that, and I thought, well, maybe there's still an audience, even if we're not doing a game currently, maybe people would love to hear more music from the Gabriel Knight universe. And so I thought, well, I'll go out, I'll do this Kickstarter and see if indeed there is any interest. And I was hoping, maybe I'd earn a certain amount to feed the project. And we ended up actually raising, more than double that. So it gave me, a lot of enthusiasm and confidence about focusing on it. And I basically spent last year doing that. And, it's been a great ride. People seem to really be enjoying it, which is nice.
Yeah, so that was a successful Kickstarter. And looks like you had so there was actually some people who helped you, people that we may know in the industry, like for instance, the Space Quest historian. He was involved.
That's right.
With some drum tracks on that. Was there anybody?
Yeah. Trolls did some really great drum tracks, and it could not have been easy because I would send him tracks that were basically already formed and done, and I don't like to play to a click. I'm more of an emotional player, so my stuff floats. And poor Trolls had to find a way to stick a beat into this stuff. But he did a great job. There's also my good pal, Roger Hooper, who's an incredibly talented composer and pianist. We did a couple of years ago, we did the album A Simple Refrain, which was Roger doing all piano versions of sort of, you could say, famous Gabriel Knight and Grey Matter themes. So he's incredibly gifted, and he did some great piano and string arrangements on this. And then also a new friend of mine, Marco, who is a wonderful Italian bassist player, did some great fretless bass work on one of the tunes that really elevated that tune. So, really, I always enjoy working with other folks. It's just nice to have somebody take the music to a new place and bring in a new perspective.
So, I mean, what was the recording process there? Did you kind of just write and then record your own tracks and then send them around and then have people, okay, this is what I hear, this is what I think would work well in this? Or did you have something in mind for them?
I kind of always operate like a producer. I mean, that both in the game world and on my own stuff, that's just kind of something I'm more comfortable with. So I might, sort of set the paradigm and say, hey, this is, the goal, and this is where I'd like to hear it go toward. But I really believe in giving people the freedom to do what they're hearing and let them respond in a way that's authentic for them. My process on this was a little different than it's been in the past. Usually when you work on a tune, as you know, you kind of go soup to nuts on that one tune usually. In this case, I took the first 3 months and I just wrote on piano I put a little cheap little digital piano on my dining room table, and every time I'd walk through the dining room, I'd stop and noodle. And so I did that for 3 months, and then I took the next 3 months and sort of built out the tracks and did all the synth and guitar stuff. And then spent 3 months mixing after that, and then I sent everything off to be mastered.
So how many hours are into and jump in anytime you want, Geek. So,
well, you know, my hair was black when I started. so, so that'll give you some idea.
So you spent a legitimate time sync record here. You know, this isn't something that you just, hey, I'm gonna kind of riff a little bit and throw this out. This is a full beautiful record, and I'm going to share a little bit of this shortly. But truly, how many hours do you think you have into it personally?
Well, you know, first off, thank you. Those are very kind words. I legitimately wanted to be able to focus my entire year on this project, and so I would say probably at least 6 days a week I was putting in at least 5 to 8 hours a day.
Oh my!
And you know, I can be kind of obsessive. And it's one of those things where I get the most sort of comfort and pleasure when I've finished a tune and I can let it go and go toward the next one. So for me, it was always kind of like, I gotta keep working this until this one's done and I can get it out.
Sure. Wow. So go ahead, Gabe. Or
I was just gonna say that. Yeah, I also backed the Kickstarter, and I'm waiting very eagerly to receive this music box, which I pledged for. But I think it might have gotten sent to my old address in the US. So I'm really hoping.
Yeah.
Like I'm hoping it turns up, because it's a very valuable piece of memorabilia.
I'm sorry you haven't gotten it yet. I think, as I know you and I talked about, I think it probably did go to that US address. So, please let me know if for some reason it doesn't show up.
Oh, sure, because that's irreplaceable. But I was going to show you something that I did receive, like, because we were just talking about trolls just there, and I just received this the other day, Sins of the Fathers, so on vinyl. So I'm really happy to get this at least.
He did a great job on that. Yeah. In fact, I had lunch with Roberta yesterday, and she had a bunch of those, and I signed a bunch.
Yeah, mine's missing a signature, so maybe maybe I'll have the opportunity to get that sometime. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, hopefully I just actually last week the vinyl tests came through for sequel, and I had some notes, so I had to go back to the guys to ask them to do some more work on it. But those are hopefully coming soon. We're getting there.
Like one thing I was going to mention, I think it's really interesting that that you have a background in film, because I think that really comes across in your music. I've always felt that your music has a very kind of filmic quality. It feels more like kind of listening to like a film soundtrack, and so I think that's interesting that you have that background, because I think that definitely comes through.
Yeah, it's probably inescapable for me, because I'm so influenced by all of that music that, from like the 1930s on. And then when you add like the melodic nature of 1950s and 60s and 70s rock and roll, I probably, for better or for worse, always approached a score as a set of independent pieces of music, and those melodies and those themes then sort of become the legs on the table, and then everything else is an extension of that. So it's not quite as fluid or nimble or sort of sound design in approach as a lot of modern game scoring is.
Right, and then and then each character in the game will have their own theme. right? Which
Yeah.
yeah, which I love. Yeah.
Yeah, there's we for a lot of years we lived in Seattle for a long time, and for about 12 years we had a basset hound named Mosley, and I actually would whistle Mosley's theme, and he would come. So he knew his theme from the game.
Mosley. Now that's a blast from the past. I sure would like to see a little bit more from Mosley sometime in the future. Speaking of what I would like to see, I'm going to go ahead and share my favorite track, if you don't mind. We'll and then maybe you could break it down a little bit, tell us what your inspiration was, and what motivated you to write and record that song. So you guys can talk for a couple seconds while I go ahead and get that queued up.
Sure. Well, in case I don't, get another chance, I want to make sure everyone knows Jane and I want to wish everybody a happy holidays and a great new year.
That's a pleasure. We certainly appreciate that. Okay, so I went to Scarlet Furies. I had it my way. If I had it my way on there. So let me pull this up here. And obviously, you can find Robert. He has his own YouTube channel as well. So
and you can always find my stuff at robertholmesmusic.com.
And I'm going to start playing. Let's pull this back. This track's called "Back in the Saddle," and I'm just gonna sit back in the saddle a little bit and listen to this then. RobertHolmesMusic.com. Okay, so tell us a little bit about the inspiration for this song here.
Well, one of the first things I did is I went back and listened to some of the old scores, and I thought, okay, these are the kinds of elements that happen in a GK score. Mm-hmm. There's the big flashy main themes, there's the emotional love themes, there's sort of more under the radar subtle stuff, things like that. So I wanted to get a couple of tunes at least that I felt kind of had that old school big sweeping Gabriel Knight kind of theme power, and this tune specifically, I thought, okay, it's been a while for Gabe. There should be a theme that sort of has some anticipation in it, and it's kind of him getting back into the realm and getting ready for what's coming, and so it certainly leans on the past a lot.
Lots of layers in that song. It very much reminds me of the intro, the prologue of Gabriel Knight 2, a little bit. The Beast Within.
Interesting.
Yeah, it kind of gets me there a little bit. Did you make the music video for it?
Actually, my good friend George Napier did that. George is another, a really gifted composer and sound designer. But he's also a great videographer, and he loves to do things where he goes out and finds existing footage and then somehow is able to create, great sort of mini stories with continuity out of existing footage. Mm-hmm. And so he did that all pretty much on his own, and really surprised me with it. I thought it served the tune well.
Yeah, I was going to say, and you might have already answered that a little bit. So do you think he was inspired to, at one point, with the sheet, very much like the Gabriel Knight, the face that's coming through the sheet type of thing there?
I think that was kind of a nod and a wink from him. He's a GK fan as well. And he actually didn't mention that to me, and he wanted to see if I would catch it. Mm-hmm. And I actually, first time I watched it, I missed it. And it wasn't until the second time I saw it, I caught it.
Very good. Very good. So what else do we have in store for the future with Robert Holmes?
Well, there's a lot that... Jane and I both really believe in sort of, embracing vision and, trying to resonate and help, raise something to the universe's awareness, and then hopefully, have that be a part of eventually manifesting and making it real. And, Sequel is a great example of that. It was kind of a quirky idea, one afternoon, and now it's turned into what it has. I think there is a very good chance, because of the way Sequel has been embraced, and people have been so nice and so great about how much they've enjoyed it. I think there's a very good chance that I'll be doing another project here in the coming year that may have a very strong relationship to Sequel. And I think, as Jane and I have been trying to get the word out, we're feeling more and more, as Jane, would say, she would love nothing better than to spend the next 5 years working on some games again. So we're trying to help create opportunities for that to happen. As we all know, the Microsoft thing is either happening or not happening. It's hard to know. But there are a lot of ways that could happen. And so we're trying to, kick some doors open. And we would love to do some more games. And we would love to, do another Gabriel. And we would love to do another Gray Matter. We would also love to see something like Gray Matter, embraced as a series on, Netflix or Peacock or whatever. So there's a lot of sort of irons in the fire. Mm-hmm. these things, of course, take time, and you never know, what's going to really happen or not happen. But we're trying to be very open and be do what we can to help, move some things forward. And that was another reason why I did sequel, and why I think I'll probably do another album project is, I really enjoy working in this musical world, the universe of these games. And, we both, obviously, Jane and I really, love working together on stuff when we get the chance.
You did not say this, but reading the tea leaves, I mean, maybe I'll just say something here. It kind of looked like you've been kicking the tires, at least doing your due diligence on seeing if you can get the rights to Gabriel Knight. You mentioned Microsoft and such, so hopefully we get to see something like that in the future.
Yeah, and the good news is, I mean, we own the rights to Gray Matter, so that's a much easier equation in terms of making something happen. But I've worked a lot with Microsoft in the past. I mean, they're smart people, and if you spend $68 billion to buy something, you're going to want to exploit the heck out of it. So I'm hoping that at least they could, as we've said a few times, it could not get any worse than it's been with Activision in terms of licensing. Yeah. So, it can only get better. Whoever ends up with those rights.
Hey, Geek, should we tell him?
Tell him. What's that? What are we going to tell him?
As big of Sierra fans, as big of Gabriel Knight, Jane Jensen, Robert Holmes fans as we are, both Adventure Game Geek and myself have not played Gray Matter yet.
That's gosh. True. Yeah, I'm ashamed to admit it, but yeah.
We've been.
You guys got to do it. It actually is one of my real favorites. Both, I think it's a great story. Jane just killed it. It's a wonderful texture. Both Jane and I are huge Anglophiles. We love England, and so it really has that sort of old, all the cool sort of stuff of the English culture and country. And I'm really proud of the music. As I was telling you, Joshua, the Scarlet Furies was a really beloved project of mine. And so it was great to have their music be a big part of the score for that game.
Yeah, I'm excited to do a little bit more research on the Scarlet Furies. Obviously, that was a project that you and your daughter built together, and so performed together as well. So that must have been a nice little touch that enjoyable.
It was. Yeah, and the other members of the band were all the guys I grew up with playing in various bands. So it was like coming home, and. It started because Raleigh had for a lot of years had an acting career and was doing movies and stuff, and so she needed to do a showcase, and she said, "Hey, Dad, can you put a band together for this one showcase?" Which we did, and it went over so well. We just kept doing gigs, and it built more and more and more, and then we did our first album, which was produced by Rusty Anderson, who is, the lead guitar player for Paul McCartney and an old friend. And
some guy named Paul McCartney.
Yeah. And Rusty's the guy, when we played together, we were both like 17, and Rusty was that good then. It was like, oh, okay, this guy's going places, and he certainly did. And then, we toured a few more years, and then we did a live album, which I'm really proud of. And it's been great. I think people really embraced the Furies. They were kind of one of the very early examples of Americana before it sort of became Americana. And, I feel really good about that work.
Well, we look forward to actually hearing that. And Geek and I have been saying that he and I are going to play it live together, like very soon, because it's just it's weird that neither of us had played, it was considered a renowned game, especially for Sierra fans. And so maybe when we play it, we'll have you on and we'll walk
That'd be cool.
with a little bit, have a little menage a three of of gaming going on here. It'd be a lot of fun. So we talked about your past, we talked about your present, we talked a little bit about your future. We appreciate having you on. Whenever we end a show, we like to finish the show, take about 5 to 10 minutes, and give our top 5 of something. As we mentioned before, we are going to be giving our top 5 adventure game soundtracks or scores, whatever you want to call them. I think we're going to see a couple of your stuff on there. So now we're not going to ask you, we're not going to put you on the spot and tell us what your favorite games are or game music and everything on, because that's just not fair. So Geek and I'll do it. If you want to say something about them, fantastic. So
Cool.
All right, Geek, we're going to let you go first, my friend.
Okay, yes, starting at number 5, right?
Yep.
Obviously. Okay, I've put down Blood Nova, which is one of one of my favorite games of this year.
Really?
It doesn't have any voice acting, but I think that's a really good example of one game where the music really elevates the game and kind of creates like a really interesting kind of soundscape for the game. It's all set in this kind of lighthouse in space on like an asteroid, and it has kind of a very kind of blue and purple kind of color palette, and just like the music just kind of enhances the kind of like the atmosphere. And I just I really love it, and also like each character has their own themes, which I always like, and so yeah, like I would highly recommend that one.
You articulated that well. We need you to write for us over at Game Hotspot.
Oh, did I? I don't always articulate everything right, but yeah.
Okay, so I'm not gonna do a 5 to 1 or a 1 to 5 or anything. I'm just gonna throw 5 of my favorite games like out there. One of them is gonna be Blade Runner. I just think that's it perfectly captured everything that game was going about. It had the ominous little score going on at specific times, and it was just beautiful from quite literally the beginning all the way to the end.
Do you think now I don't know that score, but in terms of the game, do you feel like it honored the film score? Because that's such an iconic score.
It had, well, I mean, that's one of the reasons why it's nothing more or nothing less than the original score in there. And so it very much kept to the value of what it was supposed to be. And so
very cool.
Geek, how about we throw out our Gabriel Knight games and just get them out of the way? And so, like, basically.
Oh, really? I was saving them, but yeah, sure, we.
Okay, sure, we could save them if you want.
Okay, because I was actually going to say that my number 4, just by complete coincidence, is also Blade Runner.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Because I haven't played the whole game, to be honest, but I know enough that it's very true to the to the film, and that film soundtrack is one of my favorite film soundtracks of all time. Like, I never get tired of that Vangelis.
That's an amazing soundtrack.
It's just it's incredible. So like that was mine as well.
Well, growing up for me, it was that was bound to be one of my favorite game soundtracks, just because I would quite literally have that CD in when I'm doing homework, things like it was kind of everything that I was about when I was a young man. And so that was your 4th. I'm going to say Broken Sword 2 was my definitely in there. I'd actually say that was my 3rd favorite altogether, but I'm not ranking them. It was different, very, very much different, because in Broken Sword, you're going all over the world, and it had a perfect way of marrying all of the different countries' music, but not making it seem like you're completely out of place. So if you're in the United States, you're listening to something from like Brazil style of music, but it honored just enough of what United States, what you're used to hearing, and something that you're comfortable with in every single aspect of it. It didn't take away from any country style either. And obviously, every country has, every country likes the same music as everybody else, but they're more naturally drawn to it. So, Broken Sword 2, absolutely stunner of a soundtrack.
Okay, my next one is kind of a more obscure one. It was actually the very first game I reviewed on my YouTube channel, which is Raya: Face the Unknown. I've always loved that music because again, like it's very each kind of location is just kind of very very evocative and just has its own theme. And like for example, you're in a temple and it has this kind of like orchestral score with chanting and stuff like that. So even though like the temple is empty, it still kind of feels like there's like something there. It's always hard to. I find it difficult to articulate like why I like certain types of music like that, like apart from saying it's very evocative or it's very atmospheric or whatever, because I don't know all the technical terms like like Robert does for for everything, like what kind of music it is. But anyway, yeah, that's mine. That wasn't so articulate as the last one. Sorry, I'll try better.
My friend,
I thought it was very articulate.
I've been in music since my early teens, and I'm still not very good at expressing exactly what I like in a song. It's just a good jam. It hits me right here. Speaking of an entire soundtrack that hits you right here, full of fantastic aura, is Grim Fandango. And I've said this before, I think that people use the blank game is a masterpiece just too freely. But I could say that every aspect of Grim Fandango, all of the production, whether it was a graphical, whether it was, musical, everything, they put so much time, and you can really see the love that was put into it and the time that was put into it. You got some smooth jazz here, you got some tambourines, and just, I would never think that I would like something like, a Day of the Dead theme type of game. But by God, it does. It gets you right here, man. Like I was saying, Grim Fandango. And every one of those tracks has so many different tracks in them too. I mean, there was a real work put into making that album. So we have people in the chat. I've been missing their chats. They're saying that your work is some of the greatest of all time. And so we have Gideon, Ryan, timeless. And so, all right.
Somebody, I've had some really amazing experiences where, one of the funny stories is I was standing in line at Disneyland and I heard this ringtone go off, and it was the GK1 theme. Mm-hmm. It was like, what?
Oh, but you actually heard that?
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, and you have those first couple of seconds where you're like, wow, this is really familiar. What is this? Oh, that's what that is. I always joke that I'm going to have a gravestone with one of those, digital recorders on it playing the GK1 theme.
Time out. So, okay, we'll put a pin in what we were talking about. Did you actually tell the person? I wrote that.
No, I did.
Oh my!
But it was a funny experience. But the coolest, I've had so many great people have been so generous in telling me how something resonated for them or what a song meant to them, and somebody just a couple weeks ago posted. I thought this was so sweet. He said, when I was in 8th grade, I was being bullied really badly. And so every morning before I went to school, I would play the GK1 theme to sort of build myself up and get ready. And I thought that was so cool.
Wow.
So it really felt good.
Wow.
That's strong.
Yeah, as a musician, you can't hope for anything more than that, to have the music mean something to somebody.
Well, Geek, go ahead. Keep
Sorry, I was just thinking how awesome that was. Yeah, yeah, that's really good. I was also thinking that if I ever have the opportunity to meet Robert again sometime, because I met him briefly at PAX West, and then rambled on about how how much I loved his music. But I think
that was so great. I really enjoyed that.
But I think like if I met Robert again, what I would do is I would set my ringtone to the Gabriel Knight theme, and then I would ask my friend to call me and say that just call me up, but just call me up, and then I'd be like, oh hey, wait.
Well, that's what I was thinking. I could all but guarantee that that's what that person did too. Oh, the days of ringtones. Oh man.
And the funny thing about that tune is when you think about everything that's come after that in the GK sort of canon, that was the very first song that I ever wrote for a Jane project, and I remember it was just kind of an experiment. I remember grabbing her and saying, hey, listen to this. Do you think this would be appropriate? And of everything, it seems to sort of have resonated the most. It's kind of weird.
She heard it and she said, that man. That's the guy. Right there.
She said, I'm sorry, who are you? Yeah.
¿Por qué?
Are you on this team? Well,
I think she found out that you were on that team. Go for it, Geek. Tell us what you got next. Two more.
Right. So we're down to the last two. My top two are very close together. But like my number two is going to be the soundtrack to Atlantis: The Lost Tales by Pierre Esteve and Stefan Peak. I don't know if Robert's familiar with that one. Oh, okay. It's a really like what I love about that soundtrack is it enhances the story so much, and like it makes you feel that you're really going on this kind of epic adventure, and like there's so many different moods to it. It can be grandiose, and then like in the action scenes is it kind of really propels the story, and so and it's very evocative of like Atlantis and everything, and you can just imagine that would be the music that was playing there, and just it's just I absolutely love that soundtrack. So.
Very cool.
Well, I had a hard time juggling between which one was going to be these are my top two. And so which one was going to be my one and which one was going to be my two. So I'll just throw out my second on there. It will be Gabriel Knight 2. It's chilling. Like it's almost haunting. And that's kind of what you were going for. I obviously with the Gabriel Knight, but it also didn't make it to where I'm too scared to be right. It set the mood for everything that was coming up, throughout the game and everything that was you were embarking in during that game. And without obviously the story was great. Any of the Gabriel Knight stories are as good as they get, but you don't truly have the full effect if you don't have a good score. What would Batman be without the wonderful Danny Elfman score? You know what I mean? It would just be a superhero movie, so a dark and ominous.
Well, that's my favorite. Mainly just because the opera was so much fun to do, and it was such a sort of a quirky thing with Jane and I for her to say, "Hey, could you write me an opera?" And after I finished choking and got up off the floor. but it was a cool experience to get through.
And Geek, hit me.
Oh right. Well, my number one. Well, okay. I think it's pretty obvious that it's Gabriel Knight 2, The Beast Within. Which I'm not just saying that because Robert's here. I actually sat down and like went through like everything just to make sure that I had my list correct. And yeah, I think it is my number one game soundtrack. Just because it's got like it's got everything. It's got like the emotion. It's got like the epic story, and it's got it's got the opera, and it's just it's just it's just perfect.
Let me ask you, Geek, when you're starting up number 2 on there, you go through the prologue, you get the whole song essentially through the prologue with the movie and everything. Is there anything that sets you up more for the game better than that little prologue intro? Like that perfectly tells you what you're getting yourself into,
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
It was great. Like when I went on that location tour, going to those locations in Germany, and I was making that video, and like scoring that video was great as well, because it felt like I was kind of like like making the game again, but like in real life, and then like putting that score, it was just beautiful to see that, and like reenacting the scenes.
Really meant, I think for both Jane and I, it had a huge emotional impact to go and research Ludwig and Wagner in the real locations, and to feel him at the place where he died, and his tomb, and the castles in Munich. I think we both just really came away with a lot of emotion about how can we communicate the emotion of his story, which was so powerful, even without all the fictional stuff.
And as I think any creative will say that you have to truly do your research. It can't be synthetic to try to capture something that you don't know everything about. And so the fact that you both of you did your work, to find what the inspiration was for it was wonderful. In fact, one of the chat members says that Ludwig gives me goosebumps every time I hear it. And so, thanks, Gideon.
Well, there's I mentioned the album, A Simple Refrain. Roger Hubert did a beautiful version of Ludwig's theme on that album. Just solo piano that, I really, was a pleasure to work with him on that.
Well, we've taken up a whole bunch of your time, so I'm going to end it with my last one here. And I'll preface by saying it's probably not... Probably number 2 was had the most to it. However, Gabriel Knight 1 touched me the most, especially, when I was a teenager, and, we just weren't used to that type of music in a game at the time. And I've not heard your remastered version of, the 20-year anniversary or something game. I didn't play it, so I haven't had an opportunity to play it yet, so I haven't heard it done up again. But what I heard back then, that was kind of everything that you wanted in music in a video game at the time, and so that stuck with me. I think about it all the time. I if there's ever a situation where I'm in, it's not necessarily just the see. Okay, I remember. Okay, this fell on top of Gabriel. I remember the music, going on, and I always place something that I've done in my life to that similar type of situation to that music and everything. And if there's ever been a good album or a good record, or obviously a good score in a game or something, and if you have scenes in your life or times in your life where it triggers those type of memories, then you know that you've done a good job on that. And so, And they're saying that you guys are absolutely amazing by bringing the great Robert Holmes to the stage. The great Robert Holmes.
Oh man, well, I still really, I mean, as I said, it was kind of challenging to go back and do the remake because you hear a lot of things that you would change, and at the same time, I couldn't really change the music too much, or it wouldn't be true to the original. But hearing a lot of those themes again, I mean, I'm very proud of that game, because I think. There's always a temptation in doing music for games to just do things that are loose enough and fluid enough that they won't annoy the game player if they get stuck there for a long time. Mm-hmm. And I was always kind of so ignorant because I'm not really a gamer, that I just sort of said, hey, I'm going to do the music, the individual piece of music, the way it wants to be heard. And it's going to go in this room, and you're going to just hear it over and over, whether you want to or not. And that was kind of my goal is, okay, it has to be good enough that you could stand to hear it over and over and over. And hopefully a few times I achieved that, but that was kind of the scenario.
And apparently people were hearing it over and over and over on their ringtones.
Yeah, I think so.
Wonderful. Hey, Geek, is there anything that you want to ask or say before we head on out?
No. I just want to apologize for only including Gabriel Knight 2 in my list and not Gabriel Knight 1. But I'm gonna make up. But I'm gonna make up for it. I promise, by playing Gray Matter.
Yeah. So
you guys need to play that.
We're gonna do it, Robert. I'll be in touch with you. So the first time that we play it, we'll have you on to play it with us.
That'd be great.
And we'll make you a gamer at least that day. So, Geek, do you want to remind everybody where they can find you?
Yeah, I'm at robertholmesmusic.com, mm-hmm. and I'm on Bandcamp, I'm on Amazon, I'm on Apple Music, I'm on Spotify. The new album's called Sequel. The album before that is called A Simple Refrain, and there's more to come next year, so stay posted.
Sequel, more to come next year. And you can find Adventure Game Geek on YouTube at Adventure Game Geek, and on Twitter at Go ahead.
What's my Twitter name? Have you forgotten? It's not Adventure Game Geek because it was too long, so it's Point and Click Geek.
Point and Click.
Yeah.
As always, you can find us over at Adventure Game Hotspot. You can find me at Weird Gaming Adventure on YouTube. But most importantly, Robert's here. Go check him out. Sequel. I'm not just saying this because Robert's here. It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful album. And we appreciate you taking the time to hang out with us today, Robert.
Oh, thanks for having me, guys. Thanks, for listening. And I just always means so much to know people are enjoying the music. So thanks for helping.
And the chat is all saying thank you, and they love you in a weird way. So for Robert, for Steven, Adventure Game Geek, I am Joshua with the Adventure Game Hotspot podcast, and we will see you guys in the next episode.